After many years of remarkably embarrassing episodes in my life that have all revolved around being betrayed by some article of my clothing, I can only draw the conclusion that at the time of my birth, my mother managed to highly offend one of the goddesses who presides over matters of clothing. It's the only explanation that makes sense to me, in the light of the number and embarrassment quotient of the many and varied catastrophes that have dogged my life from childhood to maturity in terms of couture. The first incident occurred when I was in the 4th grade. Up to this point, I'd been a relatively normal kid, happily tumbling about in blue jeans and shirt on the playground, just like the other kids. Until, that is, my mother was given a hand-me-down sunsuit, probably from Shirley Temple's mom. A sunsuit was a hot item in 1949 and was rather useful in the tropical heat of largely unair-conditioned Florida. This particular version appeared to be innocuous at first sight, consisting of a short-sleeved top that descended into one long strip of blue-checked gingham with ruffles on each side. One entered the contraption by means of slipping the head into the neck opening, putting the arms through the appropriate armholes in the top of the garment. Then the long strip of cloth passed between the victim's legs and was brought up behind, wrapped around the waist and tied. And for added security, there was a button and buttonhole on each side as well. It was pretty darn cute, according to my mother and grandmother, that is, but I can tell you that to me it was hideous from the outset. First of all, I hated to look different from the other kids. Secondly, I had developed what turned out to be a lifelong hatred of ever appearing cute. In those long ago unenlightened days, before psychology had its way with child-rearing practices, it was the parents who made the decision about what would be worn to school and what would not. And my household was no exception. If Mom said I would wear the cute sunsuit to school, then that is what I wore to school. No arguments. I put on the sunsuit and stomped glumly to the West Central Elementary School. All went well at first, since 4th graders in those days were not terribly fashion conscious. And on the playground, where we all loved to pretend to be horses, I had a pretty good whinny. It was after the pre-luncheon recess that the disaster overcame me. That recess was fairly long, so we'd been galloping, whinnying, stomping, and sometimes even kicking for some time. When the bell rang, indicating we were to return to our classrooms, we all trudged slowly into the building. I gradually became aware of a great deal of giggling and whispering behind me, and I felt an odd tugging on my clothing. Then I heard someone whisper, "Look at that girl's panties!" About that time, someone stepped on my sunsuit bottom, causing me to lurch abruptly to a halt. Oh no! I reached gingerly behind my back, hoping against hope I would not find what had caused the tugging and stopping. I was out of luck. The worst had happened. The buttons on my sunsuit were not up to the romping of a healthy 9-year-old who was imitating a wild horse, and neither were the strings. And there I was, my white cotton panties on display to the entire population of West Central Elementary. Without turning around, I reached down, grabbed the offending garment parts, which luckily had not ripped when stood on, and fled to the girls' bathroom. In retrospect, I have to admire the courage of the humiliated 9-year-old that came to school the next day and ignored anyone who happened to mention the catastrophe. I'd like to be able to say that that was the end of it, but this particular story has an even more embarrassing sequel.